All right, what's going on, adventurers? Welcome to another episode of the Adventure One podcast, or the Adventure Talk Live series, kind of the live video version of the podcast. So, Kyle was texting me earlier today talking about how he was working on processing some deer meat, and I realized, well, he's killed a deer, and I killed a deer, and some other stuff's hit the ground, and we haven't talked about it yet. So, figured we'd do one of these. Get some FaceTime and get some good audio going and tell some hunting stories. So what's happening, dude?
Hey, how's it going?
Going well.
Just, you know, excited to be talking about the outdoors while I'm sitting inside,
You're hunkered
dreaming about
down
being outside.
under
Nice.
quarantine.
Yes, but
Yeah.
no, thank you.
Yeah.
But I think I'm gonna get out in the woods, which I'll be quarantined away from all the people. I may spread something to the dead deer or something that I shoot.
I'd say spread some lead.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I guess before we kind of get started, I don't know, any updates or, I don't know, kind of preambles to this conversation?
Um, well, I would say that going through my last hunt, I will share a few things if there's any dads out there or moms out there that want to take your kids out hunting. I'm gonna share a few pointers on that, like live and learn and live and make mistakes and what to do, what not to do. So I'm gonna share a little bit about that with this one because definitely took the family out on this last hunt. So
Okay. Well, cool. Good input. Well, so I guess it all started Friday night. Not this last Friday night, but over a week ago. So I was going down to my place out in Southwest Texas. And then Kyle, you're on the way. So it's always a good chance to kind of sneak by, say hey
Yep.
to you for a quick moment. And it was your
Yep.
birthday. So of course I had to say hi.
yeah, I felt bad after you left that I didn't feed you. So
Oh, it's okay. I don't even remember. Like, whenever I go on a
I
road trip, it's
we,
like my chance to be like, I don't know, to eat fast food or something that I
yeah,
normally would never eat. So I think I like got fried chicken on the road and like,
yeah.
I don't know. It allows me to be an apologist for like unhealthy habits. So it's all good.
Well, we had a delicious meal. Is backstrap. What's the backstrap Wellington? So
Oh,
Mario made backstrap Wellington with mushroom
and the
crust,
pastry
and then
crust.
in the pastry. Oh my gosh! And it was still like
Oh, dude.
medium rare. It was freaking awesome. And then I made a pepper gravy that went with it. That was just like, oh,
Dude,
oh
that sounds so good. I gotta try
gosh,
that.
it was amazing.
Did
You
you have
have
a
to ask him
recipe or
how
you just kind of make it up?
Mario did it from a beef Wellington recipe, and then just like adjusted everything for size and temperature and things like that.
Okay. Huh.
But it was awesome. He seared it, and then he like put it in the freezer, and then wrapped it, and then baked it so that the middle would still be medium rare. And he brought
Nice.
it. Oh my gosh, it's so good.
And it's still
I'll have
crispy
to
and
ask.
flaky on the outside.
Yeah, we should get that recipe. I'll send you a picture of that.
Yeah, that
It's,
sounds awesome.
yeah, that was all gone by the way by the time you got it there.
Yeah, you didn't mention it,
Yeah,
so I figured.
some freezer treasure uh, venison that was left over was the only thing left
There you go.
from 2018. It was still good though.
Yeah, I was just saying you vac seal stuff, so I'm sure it was.
Yeah. Actually, back then I didn't. So
Okay. It was just
didn't.
in
Yeah.
wax paper.
Yeah, I think I did. Yes. So it was wrapped in saran wrap and then wax paper.
Oh, nice. The
I
double
up.
double wrap.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Yeah.
Well, so it was cool to hang out, stop by for a little bit, but then my drive down there is so stinking long that I was standing there and I'm like, oh man, I gotta hit the road. It's gonna be so late by the time I
Yeah.
got there. Um,
Yep.
and then drove all the way down. You know, for me, it's also a good chance to like listen to some audiobooks, catch up on podcasts, stuff like that. I used to really not like driving long distances, but now I don't know. It's like it's more just like finding the time to do it. It doesn't bother me. as much. Like it's kind of relaxing actually.
Yeah.
I just hate how much
decompression
time it takes.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so got down there, and then I did my stupid thing that I've done a couple times where I was like, by the time I got there, I think it was like 2:30. And so I was like, well, because you remember how far the cabin is past my hunting area. So I'm like, either I can go to the cabin and get like 2 hours of sleep and then roll all the way back. I'm like, I'm not going to do that. So I pulled my truck like into those cattle pens, and then I just slept in my truck. Just put the seat. But what was really funny is I was woken up. It was actually, I think I set my alarm for 5:45 because it was pretty close to my hunting area. I'm like, that'll give me 10-15 minutes, throw on my hunting clothes and just head over there. Be in the stand by 6:10, something like that, because I think sunrise was like 7:15, something like that. But what was funny is I was like, my alarm was just about to go off, and then the guy who hunts past me further down, I didn't even realize he was going to be there that weekend, but I got woken up because I heard a side-by-side coming. And so he just like pulled up right by my truck, and I woke me up, and I just like sat up real quick. And of course, my stupid long hair right now was all standing up, and he was just like, "Good morning, sunshine." And he's like, he looks like the Nutty Professor at hunting camp. And I was just like, "Hey."
No, thank you.
And I'm just like, "Good luck." So. The timing worked out perfect because it was about when I was going to wake up anyway. He got a kick out of it, and then I basically just walked over to my stand.
Nice.
Got set up. I think that's when my feeder was screwed up, so it didn't go off in the morning because I'm a moron and I did daylight savings time wrong. When ultimately, like big picture, so if you ever have like deer feeders and you're like, okay, set it an hour for daylight savings. Here's a way to make it way easier that I think you've said to me, and I just totally ignored you. Just don't do anything. It's okay if the timer's wrong. It still goes off at the right time compared to the sun. Just don't do anything.
Yes.
Like maybe as the days start getting really shorter, if you were like right at dawn and dusk, you might need to bring it a little tighter. But
for sure. Do it like set it 30 minutes later in the morning and 30 minutes earlier in the evening. But don't even touch the time. Just be like, just shift it 30 minutes forward and backwards every 6 months or whatever, 5 months.
Well, what's funny is a lot of people do it the other way around. Like it's on daylight savings time, and then they're not used to it going the other way because they just run it during deer season, which most of deer season's in daylight savings time.
Well, it used to be like all of it. Like remember when it used to be like mid-October? Or something like that. It was October when they used to do daylight savings. Now it's like November.
I don't know.
November or whatever. So,
I think I'm just going to move to, Arizona? It doesn't do it.
Half of Indiana doesn't do it either. Think about how that goes.
Yeah. That just makes it confusing.
That was the case when I was growing up. I don't know if they've changed it now, but I just remember that was always the joke. The dumb
Interesting.
Indianans. I don't know what they're called. Whatever.
But I was sitting there that morning. I think all I saw was like a button buck or something. I don't even remember seeing a lot that morning. And I pretty much did an all day. Well, I was going to try to do an all day sit, but I got restless. And then normally I stop and get ice and corn and stuff on my way in, but all those places were closed at 1 a.m. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna, instead of going to the cabin just to make lunch here, that's just what I'm gonna go do. So drove back into town, which is like 20 minutes away, got some corn, got some ice, picked up some lunch, and of course lots of hunters because it was rifle season now. It seems like during bow season, like it doesn't get that crowded down there. I mean, obviously people hunt, but it's just not all over the place.
Most places just crowded, because let's say you have a lease with 6 guys on it, usually like consistently you have 1 or 2 guys during bow season. Rifle season rolls around, it's like out of 6 guys, 5 of them are there. Like first weekend, 5 out of 6, because some people are still bow hunting, like that guy right there.
Well, and it also Texas too. It's just like I feel like there's some states where there's kind of an even mix, but it's just like Texas. I don't know. The first couple weeks of season, people who like just own a rifle and kind of want to hunt, like they go out and do it. Like
Yeah.
lots of rifle hunters in Texas.
I think that's pretty common in most states where like opener of gun season, like everybody and their brother that's got a gun goes out. You know, I think that because that was common in Michigan, where it's like, oh, you got a gun, like you know, you can shoot a deer. You want to come
Yeah.
hunt with me? Okay. So like everybody goes. So I don't know. I think that's pretty common. Where like a bow, obviously you can't do that unless you pick up a crossbow and shoot it 20 times and feel like you're good enough to.
Well,
But nobody's
that's
handing
for
down
public
a
land.
Yeah, nobody's handing down a crossbow for 60 years like they are their 30-06, you know?
There's not a crossbow that lasts 60 years. They
No,
all
there isn't.
self-destruct long before that.
About what, 6 years? Are they all?
If somebody was like, "This is Granddad's old crossbow," I'm like, "Do not touch that thing. That is a bomb."
Take the strings off and hang it on the wall.
Yeah. Go hang it in a Bennigan's or something, or one of those places that just puts cheesy crap on the walls.
Yes.
But anyway, so I got my stuff, came back for that afternoon. I think I was back in the stand by about, I don't know, 1:45, like pretty early. So I was going to do a long afternoon sit just because it was the rut, and that's where the Texas rut is definitely different than a lot of places, because I think this was what, the 20th, 21st, something like that. And I felt like I timed it perfect. Like I was right there when they were chasing. And North Texas, I think it was a couple days earlier than that. But South Texas, I think that was perfect. So sat there, and it was interesting. That afternoon, I saw a little, I think it was a button buck again, come out, eat some of the corn, hang out. Then another little, no, actually, before that, I saw that little nubbin buck. I was sitting in my truck taking a nap, and I looked in my rearview mirror when I was about to get up, and I saw a deer walking up right behind me. I'm like, huh. And I let it walk by me, and then I tried to sneak up on it just to see how close I could get. And I probably got about 5 yards, 6 yards, something like that. Like enough that you could clearly see it with my cell phone just behind a bush.
Like that's all. That's cool.
So, but it was just a young, dumb deer. It wasn't that I was being especially sneaky or anything, just a not very intelligent one.
But it's something.
Yeah, no, it's fun to do.
Yeah, it's fun to like try to be ultra aware of like, and just like watch the mannerisms of the animal and just be like, oh, when I made this sound, he perked up. When I made this sound, he didn't care at all.
Yeah.
And then it's just like amplified once you get to like an older, wiser animal. But
yeah, that's true.
You get the little subtleties with those younger deer. Just like what really like, what was that? You know?
Yeah.
It's like, what can you get away with type of thing.
Well, so I got back in the stand, and then I saw it was either that deer or another little buck fawn. I think there's a lot of buck fawns, like where I'm at. And that's also something that made me nervous about shooting does down there. Got to be real careful. But I saw one little buck fawn come in, and then a young doe with her fawn. Like the doe and the fawn, like it was hard to tell them apart even. Like the doe was just so small. A lot of places you'd be like, oh, well, it's November, so the fawn's pretty big and healthy. I'm like, no, the doe's just small. Like the doe's 70 pounds and the fawn's 55. Like not much difference. So they came in, and then and yes, I had hand thrown some corn on the ground, and that's what they were going after because the feeder was all jacked up. And then another doe and fawn came in, and what was interesting is they kind of like milled out for a bit, but I had only thrown like a little bit. It wasn't like the full feeder had gone off, and so they just hung out, and then they actually bedded down. Like in the shade, like basically right. So you know where my bow stand is. It's in like a thick patch of live oaks, and then there's like some shade. You know, when the western sun shines there, like they literally laid down 10 feet in front of my bow stand, and just like all kind of one at a time they laid down. Then one of them would stand up, walk around a little while, and then go back to the others. And then one of the does kind of got up and started acting a little bit anxious, and then kind of got up and then walked off like 100 yards and then laid down there. And then sure enough, I see a buck coming in, who like runs right up to, and he scent checks every single one of those little fawns. He like walks up and like noses them out of bed, and they stand up, and he like smells them, and then moves on to the next one. And so he like nosed every one of them.
Wow.
And then went over to where that doe was, and when he bumped her up, she kind of just like sheepishly trotted off, and then he was just like, "Oh, it's on." And so he went running after her, and I saw him like run around. They like ran like a circle around that meadow, and then I didn't see him again.
Wow.
And then probably
What size buck was that?
so if I just posted the video of my archery opener when I shot that, actually this guy, when I shot this one, there was an 8-point that was with him, and I'm pretty sure it was that buck. So
Gotcha.
like just in the ears,
Yeah,
2.5,
yeah.
maybe 3.5-year-old 8-point. I think he was 2.5, but
Nice young.
healthy looking deer. Just he
Yeah.
needs some age.
Yep.
He's not mature.
Yep.
But so he came running by, and so that was cool because that was, I don't know, my whole thought process was, hey, maybe I'm timing this rut. Maybe they're right. Maybe they're chasing. Maybe I'm seeing some rut activity. And then when I saw that, I was like, oh, it's on. So they went running off. And then sure enough, about 30 minutes later, I saw there's like a little gap in the trees. I just saw a deer step out, and it was just standing very alert. And I'm like, oh, that's a buck. That's a buck. What is it? And so I, got my binos up on it. I'm like, he's taller than that other one. I can't really tell what he is, but he's taller, like body-wise and antler-wise, than that other one. And then sure enough, he basically ran that exact same trail where the doe had walked. And so he kind of looped back one way and then circled back the other way, like right on their trail. And I had my gun up. I think I still had my safety on, but I was looking at him. I'm like, no, he's not big enough either. And it was super tempting, but he had real tall G2s. And so I thought he was something good, but then it turns out like he was pretty skinny in the ears. So he was 12 and a half, 13 inches wide. And I think he was about the same age, 2.5. So about the same size deer. But the first one, I'm pretty sure that's an 8-point that I've been seeing since before season. Yeah. And then this one I didn't really recognize because the tips of his antlers like hooked in quite a bit. And somebody killed a good sized one that looked kind of like that. So I think this is like either his offspring or little brother or something.
Yep.
But anyway, they ran by and I was excited because I thought I was going to get a shot. And then I realized, like, I don't know. I think sometimes people say like, oh, I passed on that deer. And they're like, well, a deer ran by you. Did you actually pass on it? Or did like in South Texas, I didn't pass on that buck. I didn't get a chance to shoot that buck. This one, I had my crosshairs on him and I didn't shoot. And I don't know. At the end of the season, if I don't have a buck, I may regret it, but I don't think I think I would regret shooting something I don't want to shoot more than I would regret not getting another deer.
You mean if you don't get a big buck?
Yeah, I got my call.
I think you got a buck right behind you.
You're right. Yep. So I think I would regret. I think I would feel worse about shooting something that doesn't meet my goals. So at that point, I was glad I passed. And then it was probably a little bit before dark. Guess what comes out? The same thing that always comes out. Hogs.
Hog.
There are a lot of pigs down there. So, but what was interesting is 2 sows came out with 5 piglets. And I was like, sow and boar? Sow, like, it doesn't make sense.
No.
And then I realized there was one that was like dark brown and like 3 black ones. And so I think it was like a play date is what I was watching, like 2 sows, and then just they were letting all the piglets, like, because the sows were just eating and the piglets were all like running around chasing each other. And it was like kind of cute. But then it's one of those moments that you realize you look at little piglets like that and you're like, yeah, they're cute when they're little, but then they like grow up to be terrorists. Like, they just grow up to be awful. But at one point, the 2 sows, were feeding, and their heads were right behind each other. And I'm sitting there with my 270 up, and I'm like, I could do it. And I think I was messaging, and I'm like, 2 hogs, 1 bullet.
Done. Yep.
And I was super, like, normally I probably would have, but because I knew I was going to be hunting in the exact same spot the next morning, I'm like, if I do that and then go tromping through there, and then I'm going to mess this whole place up.
Yeah.
So I had to just kind of think through that, and I'm like, well, I can come back any other time and probably shoot hogs. Literally every
Yep.
time I've been there, I've seen hogs. Not always got a shot,
Yeah.
but I've seen hogs every time I've been at the
Yep.
lease this year. So I'm
Yep.
like, I can do that later. Let me just see what
Yep.
happens. So I sat there and watched and waited, and then they gradually worked away, and then didn't see anything else that night. So went into camp. I don't think anybody else at the deer camp had killed anything that night, which is unusual. Normally you show up and
Yeah.
something's hanging,
Yep.
but nobody
That
had
is
killed
weird.
anything. So we just kind of hung out. Somebody had made a big pot of gumbo, so that was cool. It's cool because that camp, like, originally it was people who just, one person got on the lease randomly. Somebody had a buddy who knew somebody, but now that we've gotten to know each other, it's kind of like that camaraderie of what is so cool about hunting camp. Like,
Yeah.
you all
Yep.
tell the stories of what you've seen, enjoy good food, have a
Yep.
beer, have a cigar, joke around, like just good old hunting
Yeah.
camp kind of thing.
Yep.
But yep, so just went to bed, and that was my Saturday.
Yeah. My Saturday was sitting around at the house. I don't remember what we did actually. But I know I spent the afternoon packing up for Sunday morning because we were going to get out to the ranch for the morning hunt. And I was taking my wife and my 6-year-old with me. And I'll tell you what, that is not the way to do it. I'm just letting you know, as in showing up in the dark. Bringing your wife and your 6-year-old, great idea. Arriving in the dark and sending your wife to a pin on her phone in the dark, not a good idea.
You get in trouble over
Hey,
that
just
one?
walk up the hill. Well, it would have been all right if it wasn't for the bobcat that was like running around by her. It freaked her out. She calls me while she's walking up the hill, and I'm driving across the property with 6-year-old. And we got there a little bit late. I mean, we should have just got there like crazy early. But my 3-year-old was staying home with the brother-in-law, and that was kind of a whole debacle in itself. So needless to say, we got out to the ranch, so we were happy about that. But sent the wife up to the blind. I'm driving across the field to get to the other side of the property, and she calls me and she's like, "Are there bobcats here?" And I like tried not to laugh because I was like, "You know that I shot a bobcat here. It's on our wall in our garage."
Yeah,
It's
like there was
this
one,
is not a
at
question.
least one
Yeah,
once.
This is yes. It's not a question that she is asking to get clarification. She's asking because she was freaking out and she wanted me to, somehow console her. I don't know what I was supposed to do. Like drive back. It would take me 20 minutes to get up that hill. So she found the blind finally in the dark and climbed in, and she's just it is a rough start going up the hill and not knowing where she's going, getting in the blind that was torn and all this stuff.
Well, and that place, like, so from one wind direction, you can pretty much walk down a road and then cut in about 100 yards. But from the wind direction that
Yes.
y'all were hunting it, you just kind of
Yeah.
got to walk through like a mesquite patch in the dark.
Yeah. Yep. So she's, yep. Yeah. And I think it was just the dark thing. It was just like if I just like dropped you off in the woods that you had never been in your life, and was just like, "Hey, just like go walk to the other side of this woods." Like there's a little bit of anxiety that goes through your head,
Yeah.
where you're just like, "Wait, where? What? Like is there like a creek, or is there like rocks, or am I gonna run into a bunch of cactus? Like is there brush? Like I can only see 20 feet in front of me."
That's where, like, I have to have something. Like, I have to have
Yes.
either experience there or a map or, like, good
Yes.
lighting, but it's like when you don't have any of those, you're just, like,
Because that would have freaked me out too. Just been like, go walk up that hill. It's up there somewhere. I'd been like, wait, what? But I've walked into I'll go to like public land and be walking in the dark and like walk into a brush thicket and be like, well, crap. Now 10 more minutes to walk around that. It's like, is that
Oh.
what I'm gonna walk into?
Yeah.
So
been there, done
like
that.
that's what I was exactly. It's like that's in my head when I'm like, hey, just walk over there in the dark. I'd be like, but what am I gonna walk into? Because
Yeah.
I'm more worried about just like walking into like thorns in my face than anything, actually.
Yeah, I'd be like, give me a topo map or something. I'm gonna fall down the
Yeah,
hill.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. So she got in the blind, and I was driving across the property to another blind that, like, I would have put her in this blind, but the problem is there's like, it's an old wood blind, and there's just like these wasp nests that just like
Oh yeah.
mud wasp, regular wasp, just nests just covering the whole inside of this thing. And I just know she would have hated that. So like it would have been the perfect spot because the wind was perfect for that spot. Like easy to walk into. It's like, hey, there's a 2 track that drives straight to it, you know?
Yeah.
It's like you're walking on a very defined trail. And that would have been great. But yeah, I just know I'd have been like, yeah, get in this box blind. She'd be like, oh heck no.
Yeah, that's true. And it's just cold enough that like the wasps
Yeah.
maybe are calmed down, but maybe not.
Yeah, they were, and there was nothing moving, but still, she would have just seen all the nests and been like, ah, 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 ah,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. That freaked
And then
a
the
lot
other
of
thing
people
is,
out.
there's that tripod there, but the problem with tripod is like started drizzling and stuff, and I was like, I'm not gonna sit you up in a tripod. It's like 45 degrees and drizzling. Like, no
Yeah.
thanks. So I was just trying, it was good wind for the spot that I put her in for the morning hunt, and just trying to do the best with the time we had. And I mean, all said and done, I probably should just walked up the hill with her with the kid, and we should all just gotten that blind she was in
Just
and
make it
called
a
it a
family
morning.
camp out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But first text that I get from her is, "This blind is tiny. What's going on? Like, I can't even move my gun around in here." And I was like, "Well, I don't know. I think like I know the sides can pop in. Are you sure the
Oh,
sides didn't pop in?"
yeah.
Yeah. It's one of those blinds that it like collapses in,
Yeah.
and the front and back had collapsed in. And
Like a
she's like, "I
hub
think the
style.
blinds, yep, the blind's aiming the wrong way." I was like, "No, it's a square." She's like,
Yeah.
"No, it's not." I was like, "Yeah, the front of that blind's popped in." And she's like, "Yep, it is."
Just give it a
It's like,
stout
oh,
kick.
yes.
And
But
don't
she
even
saw a
try to be
deer.
quiet because it's not happening.
Oh yeah, but she saw a deer right when she sat down, like out of the corner of the blind, that was just like walking up the hill just past her, and all she saw was this big bodied deer to her left. It was about 30 yards after she showed me where it was standing that afternoon, but never got a shot on it. She just like it was walking up the hill, oh, like not out in front of her. So she was frustrated about not getting a shot on it. But I'm like, you can't like if it doesn't give you a shot, you can't just make a shot.
Yeah.
Like you did awesome.
Yeah.
You got in the stand, you sat down. If it would have presented itself in front of you, you would have shot it, but it didn't. So they walked. So,
Yeah, well, and
but anyways,
sometimes, I mean,
so
to that, sometimes the worst thing you can do is just like try to go for a shot that you don't have, and you end up just making a huge ruckus and commotion instead of just being
oh
like,
yeah,
well, it doesn't know I'm here. Maybe it'll come back.
yeah, exactly. Instead of making a bad shot, blowing up the whole place.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but my 6-year-old and I were walking out to the stand, and like I said, we were late. But I mean, is what it is. You make the best of it when you got the kid with you. So we were walking out there, and we turned the corner, and there's the feeder, and there's 2 white tails trotting away from us. Like crap. And
So
then they
they were
stopped, and so we
at the feeder already.
yeah, they hadn't even gone off yet.
They were
So they're
waiting,
just
waiting for their daily
waiting.
ration.
Yes, they were. So they were there early. But they ran out and they stopped, so we didn't move at all. We just stayed there, and then they just ended up like walking away. But it was still dark. It wasn't shooting light yet, so we're probably about 10 minutes out of shooting light.
What I think is crazy is like a whitetail's sense of time. Because like
Yeah,
they have no clocks, they have no regular schedule other than like what the sun does.
yep,
And to the point that I've seen deer do that, like come to a feeder where literally they walk up and stand there for a minute before it goes off.
yeah,
And then they're just like,
yep,
that they can be that precise is just like animals
yeah,
that just wander. It's pretty amazing, actually.
yeah. I've seen a lot of them. They'll like walk up like 5, 10 minutes early, be like, oh, I'm here early, and then they wander away, and then they hear it, and they come
And they
running back,
come
but they're like,
running in.
yeah, yeah. It's like I know the time to be here. It's
Yeah.
like, but the time hasn't happened yet,
Yeah.
so they're staging up for the corn.
And it's interesting because deer
But
will
yeah,
be proactive like that, whereas pigs, I don't feel like they're more reactive.
yeah, yep. They're like, oh, I smell something, run
Yeah,
right
get
here,
it, eat it, eat it,
run.
eat all the
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, so when those two deer they like kind of they trotted back away from the feeder and then cut to like made a 90-degree angle. They're like kind of slowly moving away and a hog ran right across right behind them. And so two deer
Huh?
trotted
A
away
big
to
one?
the mid-size.
Okay,
I don't know. I
but
mean,
just
like I
one by
said, it was
itself.
one. Yeah, so it's probably a young boar or something.
Well,
Just
what's
got cut off.
interesting, so in that same spot, Daniel killed a big sow, and then
Yeah,
there's another boar that we'll
that was
talk
a
about
sow.
later. But he
Yeah.
said when he shot that sow, there were two other hogs with it.
Huh. Oh,
So
I mean, like I said, this was like I this was out way past the feeder. You know how it's like kind of
back by the
a
creek.
little bit open? Yeah,
Yeah,
a little bit open.
yeah,
It's like where the creek comes together. You can see out about 80 yards. That's where they're like kind of running around or whatever. And I just saw a black run across hog. So I mean, there might have been 10 of them that I didn't see.
yeah.
I don't know.
True.
I just, all I saw was one very distinct, like that was a hog that just ran. Because Ken was like, "What's that little black deer doing?" And I was like, "It's like that was a hog." Oh, shoot it! And I was like, "I can't see it through my scope yet." So, yep. So then we got in the blind and just sat down and chilled out, had a good time waiting.
And then
So
did you see anything else that morning, or was that pretty much it?
that was it. That was all the activity we saw. But we definitely got some good deer hunting practice. So here's my little tip for you. Any parents out there, take your kids out in the blind. First of all, I mean, some of you have hardcore kids that you just like go ahead, take them out and like just be hardcore with them. That's awesome. But if your kid is just like kind of adventurous and is like, ooh, I'll try this deer hunting thing out with mom or dad, then my opinion is try to make them comfortable and lighthearted and as fun as possible,
Yeah,
even even if that messes up your hunt a little bit, even if it's not like the perfect situation, like what I see as the perfect hunt for myself is not the same thing as I see as a perfect hunt for me and my 6-year-old. So, like, we sat down and, like we counted birds at one point, things like that. Like, I even like I handed him my phone and let him like go through pictures, just like kind of like wasting some time away type of thing. We also had a code that we set up for if he's sitting there like looking at the phone or doing something else. And if I see something, we practice this a couple times. I just reach back and I tap his knee. And when he feels a tap on the knee, if there's anything in his hands, he quietly sets them down. And I told him to slowly stand up enough so he could see out the window and see what I was going to shoot at
yep.
and have his ears plugged. So that was our routine. And we tried it, we did it a couple times and he did a great job with it and he'd come up with his hands over his ears and be looking around like a little, which is one of those things where it's like if he stands up and that deer runs away because he was standing up to see the deer,
Yeah,
I have to be okay with that.
yeah,
Like I have to be fine with that. Like it's one of those things. It's just like I'm not gonna be mad at him. I'm not gonna like. I'm gonna turn around and be like, "Did you see that deer? That was so cool." Like that's the attitude you have to have when you're
better
out
to
there.
risk ruining one hunt than like risk ruining the fun of hunting in general.
Exactly. Yeah. I'd rather have him like whatever he does, unless he's like the kid's really being a turd. Like whatever they do, you just like kind of praise them for it and be like, "Oh man, like you were so quiet. That was awesome."
Yeah,
Like, "Oh, you sat there so long this morning, man. You're such a good hunter." Like just telling them like all the good things that they've done throughout the morning or the evening or whatever. Like you start doing that, and they're like, "Oh man, I think I'm a good hunter. I want to go back out again." Because I told him I was like, "I think I'm gonna go out this week." He's like, "Can I go with you?" And I was like, "Well, maybe. We'll see." Like it's one of those things. Like if you just keep praising him, and then you like he sees that I'm passionate about it, then they'll jump onto that real quick. But if you're just like so hardcore about it that like
Yeah.
you have to have your way, and you're like every little thing you're like getting on them about it, they're not gonna enjoy it
Well,
most of
and
the
I've
time.
seen people like they want their child to be into hunting so much that even if the kid probably would get into it, but they force it too early or they're too rigid about it that it kills all the
Oh yeah,
fun.
yeah, yeah. And that's my whole thing is I've always asked, and I'll ask, and I'll ask, and I'll ask, and I mean, one time we decided to go dove hunting, and we literally my same kid, he was 5 at the time, but he told us he wanted to go out dove hunting with us an
Yeah.
hour before we left, and we were going for a whole weekend. And so we just stopped at Walmart on the way out and picked up a bunch of camo clothes for
Bought
him.
some rubber boots and the cheapest camo
Yep,
pants you could find.
yep. Walmart rubber boots and the camo pajamas is what we bought him. That's
There
what
you
he wore
go.
out there.
Hey, that's what the U.S. Army
And the,
wears,
yeah,
basically.
exactly. And it worked great. We killed a bunch of birds. We got our limit.
Yeah, I think that was
Two
the
days in a
hunt
row.
that I accused you of bringing your son so that you could stuff more birds in his bag.
Yeah, right.
Because I've,
That was a hunt where we could have done that because we had
yeah,
so
yeah,
many
you
birds
didn't though.
around
You
us.
did everything right, but we could have. There were a lot of birds.
Oh, yeah, we didn't. But yeah, that was the most dove I've ever seen in my life. But
Yeah, it was good. Well, so how long
anyways,
did y'all sit in the stand? Did you do a full morning? Did you have to get up early?
yeah, so we got out of the stand yeah, we did a full morning. It was like almost 10 o'clock. I think we walked out at 9:50.
Nice.
So it was a good long morning for a 6-year-old.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
Well,
but
and then
how did your morning go? Because this was Sunday morning.
yeah,
So let's hear about your Sunday morning.
so we need like some sort of like transition. Like, meanwhile, back at the ranch,
Yeah.
100 miles south of you. I think it is about 100 miles south of you.
Is it? I thought it was a little more.
Yeah, I don't know,
Like 100,
somewhere,
130.
several hours south of you. Um,
Yeah.
so I realized I was like, well, I threw out some corn there. I was like, I don't know how well things are patterned, but I think it's gonna be better than the previous day. And I had been filming this whole thing. I had my camera, and so like I filmed. Actually, I got some really good footage, and that was one thing that was exciting about the first day, because self-filming, I think I've told you, like in one way, it was really frustrating at first because it's like,
Yeah.
dang it, like I can't get the video and get the shot, and but now I kind of like that it gives me something else. Like when I'm not shooting, I'm
Yeah.
like, hey, let me get a cool shot of that deer that I don't want to kill, but let me just get a really cool video.
Yep.
And so with them
Yeah.
chasing and stuff the day before, I'm excited to go through that video because I think I got some
Yeah.
excellent like high quality 4K deer footage. I brought that big
Yeah.
long lens and everything. So
I'm excited to see that too.
yeah, I think it was pretty good. We'll see. I don't know. There's a chance that like I feel really good about it, and then like I had autofocus turned off, and like so you never know till you really look at it. Um,
Yeah.
but that next morning, I was like, okay, enough messing around here. So I was like, I'm still, my goal is to kill a nice buck, but I'm gonna
Yeah.
wait till kind of the first early morning rush, and then there. So right at first light or right before first light in that meadow, it's pretty good. But then as soon as the sun starts coming up, stuff clears out of there quick. So I was like, well, if there's any does hanging around after that, today is the day where I'm not leaving empty-handed. So if I see pigs, I'm blasting them. If I see a
Yeah.
doe, I'm gonna be careful because I know there's a bunch of nubbin bucks and button bucks, but I'm
Yeah.
not leaving empty-handed. And so that morning it was right about first light. I think it was probably all the deer I saw the night before, but they came in like a totally different order from a totally different place. But just some fawns, nubbin bucks, and then a doe, but not a big doe. But down there they don't get real big. So I got some really good footage of them, kind of bouncing around in the pen, eating corn, walking around. And so at that point, I was like, well, hopefully a buck will see them and come in. And I actually saw a buck come in. Actually, I skipped something from the day before. Man, my stories are all out of order. Before I saw those 2 little 8 points, I had rattled at about 2:30 in the afternoon, and I rattled in a little 6 point, and he came running
awesome.
straight to me, and it was like,
yeah, that's awesome.
It was like I had him on a fishing line.
Yeah.
It was just cool to see him respond that well. Like he literally stood out in the field and was just like,
where is it?
You called.
Where are they? Yeah.
And then he just kind of walked off confused. But I saw him show up again that next morning, and then he just kind of looked at those does for a second and then just walked on by. Like he didn't even go check out the corn or anything. So I saw him. I'm like, I don't know, maybe another buck's coming in. Waited. No other bucks. No pigs even. I thought I heard a pig maybe, but never saw any. And so at that point, they were starting to spread out a little bit. One of the fawns had kind of wandered off. So I'm like, okay, they're going to start kind of wandering out of here pretty quick. And so I was trying to pick out the biggest one, which was kind of tricky because, a 6-month-old buck fawn is about the same size as a small doe. So I was just trying to be really careful because it would have been legal, but I don't know. I don't pride myself in killing a buck fawn. Nobody does. And I didn't want to hang my buck tag on that. So I was trying to be really careful about which one was which. And it was interesting, like the size wasn't even the giveaway as much as the behavior. Because I would see the little ones come in and the doe would just like smack them like with her hooves. Yeah. Or like bow up to them and like run them off. And so it was like, I don't know, like seeing like a grumpy mom in a Chick-fil-A, like fussing at her kids. Like, just give me some peace and quiet. Let me enjoy my meal.
Get back. Step off, boy.
So the behavior pretty much gave it away. So I'm like, okay, that's the oldest, most mature deer here. Not necessarily a big doe, but I've got a doe tag. I'm here. I've got my rifle. And so I guess a whole project of mine, and when we did our kind of hunting goals episode for this season, was to kill a deer with a cartridge that I had loaded myself. And so I'm like, great, this is a perfect opportunity to get that goal done. And I used to always neck shot does. It was kind of like my thing. And then last year I had a real bad experience with that. I went for a low neck shot and it made a mess. Had to run that deer down and put another one in it, and it was not good. So that's when I realized, don't ever try a low neck shot, always high neck, and never looking at you, always from the side. So now that I know that, and I feel like,
why not looking at you?
Because looking at you, so if I model like, all the vitals are lined up right here. And so if you miss a little bit to this side or a little bit to that side, you can just hit meat, or like it'll bleed, but it won't necessarily just drop and die. But if it's like sideways, you can hit anything in there.
Multiple vitals in there. Gotcha. Yeah. You got the whole neck to hit.
Yeah. So it's like, ideally you'll hit the spine and it'll just shut off and fall right there. Even if you don't, it'll hit the ground and bleed out in 10 seconds. So it's from the side, it's a great shot. But I don't know, after screwing up that one a year ago, like it really shook my confidence. And I think that's another thing too. Like the biggest thing is you need to just have confidence that you can put it exactly where you want to. Because if you're shaky or if you're just like, I'm trying to hit a deer, like don't try it. Don't try it. But since I had been reloading my ammo and I tried the same bullet with 53 grains of powder, 54, 55 grains of powder. And I had been shooting all these little groups and I knew exactly what was going on. I was like, okay, I know I can put it in an inch at 100 yards if I do everything just right. That neck is probably 4 inches. And so when she stretched out her neck to get corn, I was just like, there it is. And she was dead before she hit the ground. So I was like,
that's awesome.
All right, neck guy's back. So it was one of those
neck guy with his.
What's that?
With his own loaded ammo.
Yeah. So that was a cool goal of mine. And I don't know, I probably want to do a whole podcast about my intro into reloading because I can get into all the details. But getting all the components has been really frustrating. So now that I had everything, I loaded up these rounds, tested them, and then be able to seal the deal and put one through a deer. It was very much just like, I don't know, like, because there have been a lot of deer, most of these ones behind me, that when I killed it, I'm like, freaking out. And this one, when I killed it, I was just like, that's great. Like everything just went right as planned. Like I wasn't really excited about the deer. It's more just like
satisfied.
that all happened exactly as it should. Good deal.
Yes.
Let me just go pick her up.
Yeah.
And then got back.
Congrats on the bullet thing, because
Thank you.
That's something that's, for me, it's like watching an Olympian do their thing, you know, where you're like, I appreciate that because they're doing something I can't, or like I would have to work so hard to do that, where it's like loading a bullet and then testing it out enough to be able to shoot a deer in the neck at 100 yards. Like that took a lot of work. You know, like that's not something that you just like woke up one morning and it's like, I'm going to go do this tomorrow and shoot a deer in the neck the next day. Like that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So,
well, and kind of that, my whole goal and all that, like, yeah, I feel pretty confident that I can load around and it'll work and it'll be good enough to hit a deer. But I'm like, if I'm going to do this, I really want to do it right. And, you know, sometimes to a flaw that I just like can't leave well enough alone. I just got to tinker with stuff.
Sure.
So that's why I like fletching my own arrows. And I thought I would like this. And then I do. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But thanks for the props on that, because it's something that was frustrating, but then when I got it done, it felt really good. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Brought that deer back to camp, and then the one lady on the lease, one guy's wife, who they ended up getting 2 lease spots for him and his wife because she really likes hunting, which I think is cool. She actually got a really nice 8-point, so I was excited to see her get a nice 8-point. And then another guy got a real big hog. So we kind of had like waiting in line, kind of all helping each other out, cleaning stuff. So
nice.
Got that skinned out. And actually, because I did the neck shot, I was like, this is not a big deer, but the perfect deer to save the skin. So I took my time in skinning it and got it all in one piece. I got 2 little nicks, like one like in the armpit and one like on the side, but enough that I could probably just like shape it a little bit weird that you wouldn't notice anything. But no like bullet holes through the body or anything. So
yeah, that's awesome.
That hide is actually, I salted it and tried it and is laid out on my patio right now. Probably about done. Need to bring that in and tan it. But yeah, so got that one done.
That's cool.
Then packed up and then started heading back north. And that's when I was like, hey, if I leave now, I can probably meet up with Kyle and Paige in time to just, I don't know, just maybe hang out, maybe get in a hunt. I don't even know what timing looks like.
Get something together.
Get down there.
Yeah.
So that's what I did.
Yeah. So we went into town and went to the pizza place, which was awesome. So good.
It's like the one like attempt at a nice restaurant in this small town, and it's the pizza's fantastic. It's just kind of an unusual vibe, I think.
Oh, it is because it's like, I don't even know how to describe it, but they like try to do a mix of modern country, I guess.
Yeah.
But
I love their billboard though. It's just like an outstretched hand holding like a Colt single action army like brass revolver, and it just says like pizza or something.
Something like it's awesome. Tattooed hand, like the sleeve up the arm. Yeah, it's cool. But yeah, talked to the owner, and he's a cool guy. Said he's heading back into Irving to his parents to see him or whatever. So that was nice. But headed back out. We went out early, so we got back out to the ranch, and we were just like sitting somewhere in the truck. I was like kind of nodding off, taking a little nap, and Paige was on her phone, and Caden was like playing with my phone in the back of the truck, and Paige just turns to me and she goes, I think I could just sit and play on my phone in a deer blind. Why don't we just go sit out at a blind? And I was like, okay. Sounds great. And so I went and we got her set up at a different spot in the afternoon and popped up the little pop-up blind. So popped up the little pop-up. She was, because the wind had shifted, it was out of the south in the morning, and then it was coming out of the east most of the day, or no, west most of the day. Yeah, it was in your face when you're walking up the creek.
Kind of weird down there, yeah.
So it was west. So it was out of the west all day, but it shifted from being out of southwest to being out of the northwest. So it was out of the northwest for the evening hunt, southwest for morning hunt. So we set her up on the south side of a feeder at about 70 yards, and got her all set up, tripod, and she's sitting there with the 270, and she's just ready to go. She's comfortable. She's good to go. Got her all
Your
set up.
270, which means you
My
didn't have it.
270, which means I did not have my 270 on a rifle hunt. This is the longest I think I've gone in a long time without sitting in a deer stand with a 270.
I know.
It's
You've just
December.
been like a stone cold killer with that thing. It's probably pretty hard to pry it out of
know.
your hands.
Yeah. Hey, if it can get me out in the woods one more day, I will hand it over to somebody.
Yep.
That's just the way it goes. Which was another reason why I felt better sitting in the blind that I was sitting in, because I was sitting there with a gun that I had like horrible sin when it comes to hunting. I had to adjust the scope and slide it back about an eighth of an inch, because I couldn't change the zoom on it, because I don't know what happened to it. So
Like the eye relief was just all wrong for you.
not that, it was the little thing that you turn to like zoom it in and zoom it out. It was like pushed up against the ring,
Oh, weird.
so it like couldn't turn.
Yeah.
So like in my brain, I was like, I don't know what to think about this. Like, do I just bring a shotgun out with me and just go no sights, just like, because
Well-
I could shoot something to 50 yards and be fine with it.
And I noticed you didn't tell me beforehand that you're like, oh, I'm just going to nudge my scope back an eighth of an inch, because you knew I would give you crap about it.
Yep. Exactly. So I did, and I did not shoot it after I nudged that scope back. I was like, I don't trust this gun very far. But it was a 338, which also, if I did hit something, it's gonna hit something.
Like, I just need to hit it somewhere.
Yes. So we dropped Paige off at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So she sat down, she's good. I took Caden back to the same blind that we were in before. We sat down at about, I don't know, it's probably 3:30-ish. So we sat down, I think it was 3:30. And we were just kind of getting settled in. We were good to go. And we were just looking around, and from straight down, like as far as you can see past this feeder, because this feeder is only 23 yards away.
Yeah,
from
we
the
set it up
stand,
for
'cause-
archery for anybody who needs the
Yes,
backstory
it's all-
there. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a blind and a tripod set up for archery there. So it's like, and it's just there's a lot of backstory there. So it's just like how it shifted out this year. It's just the way it planned out. It's not like the most ideal situation for anything, but well, it's ideal for archery. So so it's close. But you could see about 80 yards, I think, through the trees straight out in front of you. And I saw a deer pop out like all the way down about 80 yards away. And then it just started trickling towards us, just slowly, just kind of like grazing in, and it was zigzagging back and forth through. And it's just like I wouldn't even call it a meadow, but it's not brush or anything.
Yeah, it's
kind
just
of an
like open woods.
tree.
Yeah.
Yeah, open woods. Yeah. Which you say that, but like if you haven't like been out into like West Texas or like central West Texas, I guess you'd say, and it's like creek bottom woods, if you can imagine that, if you know what I'm talking about.
It's like elms and ash trees and just crap.
Yep.
Yeah.
All the brush is cleared out in that spot, so there's nothing in the way. I could see this deer the whole time. So, I had already tapped my son. He like got settled in. Yep, covered his ears. He stands up. He's looking out the window, and I look back at him and I check him. I'm looking at this thing, just making sure it's not a little button buck or anything like that. I check the head 3 or 4 times, like just check and check and check, and looking at how it's moving and things like that. And then she got to about 40 yards, maybe a little bit closer even. And she was cutting over like she wasn't even going to go to the feeder right then because the feeder hadn't gone off. It's 3:45. So she was probably just like kind of moving in to like just lay down somewhere until the feeder went off is my guess. But I didn't want her to just like wander off and then somehow walk around us and wind us or something, you know?
Yeah.
And just, you know, so like I was like, no, my 6-year-old is standing behind me, watching me. He's never been deer hunting with me before. There's a deer at 40 yards.
He's ready for the show.
It's not a button buck. Yes, it's not a button buck. I'm going to shoot it. And so just put the bead on her and shot her. She was quartering too, so I just shot her right in that front shoulder, and she came running right at like
the front shoulder.
Blasted her. The front shoulder, yeah. Well, yeah, I didn't want to hurt the meat in the back shoulders. So she's quartering too pretty good. So I shot like the front of that shoulder.
Yeah.
Like not in the middle, but like the front of it. It's like almost on her chest. So I shot right in the front of that. And
did she just drop right there?
Nope. She jumped like hard, like big old jump.
Man, I would think with a rifle like that through the shoulder.
Yeah.
Huh.
And she jumped really high and then bolted running like almost right at us. She ended up running past the stand at 10 yards and ran into a mesquite tree and dropped.
Wow.
Like just like smacked it.
You're done.
And yep. And Kane's like, well, there she is.
That's what he said. There she is.
Yep. He goes, there she is. Because right before I shot, I looked back one more time to make sure his ears were plugged. And I think he had put his head down. I don't think he was watching me shoot.
Gotcha.
So, like, after I shot, he looked up and he watched her run past her, run into the tree. He goes, there she is.
Well, so she ran a couple yards, but.
Yeah, she ran probably 20 yards because she ran past the stand. So.
Oh, weird.
Maybe 30 yards. I don't know. So, like, she ran right under the tripod, actually.
Gotcha.
That gives you, like, right through that area. And then past, if you're looking out that side window to the right and ran into one of those trees, like, right there to the right.
Like the way you walk into the stand.
Yep. Yeah, she ended up, like, running into a tree, like, 5 yards from the 2-track.
On your way out, basically.
Way out, exactly.
Nice.
So yeah, so we were sort of sitting there and Ken goes like, he's like, so do we just go get her? And I was like, no, like, I don't know if you know me yet. I'm your father. And do you know how many times I've come home with 2 deer from 1 hunt?
Yeah. Like, just wait.
Like, we're going to sit here and wait a little longer. So we waited and we gave it about 30 minutes. And then he's like, and he keeps looking up at her and kind of looking around and looking up at her. And, you know, just like,
he's antsy.
Like, oh, yeah, he's getting really antsy. And I was like, do you want to go get her? And he's like, yeah, can I get out there? He goes, can I run out to her first? And I was like, oh yeah. And so,
right. Well, that's just cool that he's like that excited about it. That he's not like nervous and shy.
Yep. He ran right over to her, grabbed her by the ear, and picked her head up.
Awesome.
He's like, "You got a good one, Dad." And I was like, "Yep."
Nice.
So he is really excited. So,
dude.
Yep.
Well,
so then
congrats.
Thank you. Yeah. So like all in all, like it was definitely like the most exciting. I don't know. I've had a lot of exciting hunts in the last couple of years. So like last year I shot my first like nice buck, like 10 point, you know, like that got me fired up pretty good.
Yeah.
This year shot my first, you know, buck with a bow and like that got me all fired up. And then shot my first deer with my son, like that'll get you fired up. Like I just had, you know,
that's awesome.
Just had so many cool things happen in the last year. This was like right up there with shooting a big buck. It's like knocking down a deer with your kid.
That's so cool.
So, yeah.
Well,
But
yeah, it's
you
just
showed up. Well, I think you showed up like right in the middle of that. It was like 3:45 when I shot that.
yeah, because I was like driving in my truck and I like got out, checked the wind at one place, got back in, so I was kind of getting in and out, and then you're like,
Yeah.
I got one, or you're like, I got her, or
Yeah.
something, and I'm like,
Yeah.
huh? Like, because I didn't hear a shot, so I guess I was in my truck right when you shot, but
Yeah.
I was like, huh? It's like 3:30 in the afternoon. Like,
Yeah.
good for you. Congrats. That's awesome.
Yep. Yep.
But so major props. That's awesome. But the other part of me wants to address that now you are fully a Texan and give you crap for you went from different styles of hunting to now the last deer you killed with a 33 caliber Magnum rifle at 33 yards.
There you go. True Texan. Hey, at least it wasn't a 45 caliber at 30 yards like I would have done in Michigan.
There you go. But
I think I did that at 9 yards actually. So
there you go. Yeah. So I realize I can give you crap for it, but ultimately, like, given the situation and that blind, like, I wouldn't have done anything different. I mean,
yeah,
it's the gun you had with you, and you're like,
yeah,
if it's 200 yards or 10 yards, it doesn't matter. That's still the best spot in there. You sat at the right spot.
Yeah.
So
if my 6-year-old wasn't there, I probably would have brought the bow out and just sat on that stand with a bow.
yeah.
Just because I feel more comfortable at 30 yards with a bow than I did with that gun.
Just because you're like, oh, we don't know where it's going to go, but just,
Yeah.
it can't be that far off.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So, anyways, I will be shooting the 270 this Friday. So,
Nice.
hopefully, shooting it. We'll see.
Well, at that point when you were doing that, so I had arrived at the gate, drove into the property, checked the wind, went like I was going to hunt the closest stand to the gate, and I'm like, oh, the wind's horrible here, because it turns out that's where Paige was and then had moved when the wind had shifted, which was a perfect call. Y'all made the right call, because the wind
I thought you were going to sit in that field and just, you could see the whole hillside from that field. That's what I thought you were going to do.
I considered it, but it's a 400-yard shot. I ranged it. So I got out and I ranged it.
I thought like go out in the field somewhere. There was a tree line on to the west, or that fence line to the west.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, like, if you have a north wind, you could sit on that fence line and see that, and you could have under 200-yard shot from there.
Yeah,
if they're coming from that corner
on that fence line. But I just felt really I didn't think through it that much. Just instinctually, I was like, I don't feel like trying that.
Yep.
And thinking back on it, it was also like super windy out in the open.
Yeah.
And so that's what I struggle with the most for long range shooting. Like in terms of trigger pull and stuff like that, like I would say I'm a pretty accurate shot, but judging wind is the hardest part of it for me. So when I'm hunting, I don't want to be making a severe wind call. And if I'm out in the open with a heavy wind, I feel like I'm going to need to call wind, and I don't know, didn't want to do it. So
that makes sense.
I went kind of past the creek where you were, kept on going, kind of close to where I sent you a pin. I'm like, hey, I think I'm going to go up here. And it was kind of close to where Paige was. And then when I got up there, all the cows were like milling about at this mesquite flat south of where she was, but kind of right where I was thinking I was going to go. And so I got out, walked about 100 yards in, sat down, and saw all the cows were still just standing there staring at me. And so I'm like, I'm just covered up in cows. This isn't going to be good. And so I started walking around one way, and they started moving, and I'm like, oh, nope, that's not going to be good, because what I really didn't want to do is spook the cows and have them all run up to where Paige was, because she was probably a quarter mile north of me, like not very far.
Yeah.
So I'm like, nope, like that would be just a dick move for me to be like the guy who shows up late and boogers up somebody else's hunt. So I'm like, I'm not going to do that. Get back in the truck, backed out, and I'm like,
this This isn't public land. Come on, man.
Yeah, exactly. Save that for the Forest Service land.
That's right.
Because that's happened to us. We've been on both sides of that equation, honestly.
Yep. Been both guys.
Yep. So I pulled back and I'm like, well, this creek, I always call it the river, but it's actually just a really wide creek because it's been dammed up. I'm like, I've seen game move along this creek many times, but nobody's really right on it up here. And actually, it's been so dry out there that almost the entire creek bed is dry. So I was like, how about I just like slowly stalk this creek and maybe something will run across it or run through it, or it's the only place where I could actually see, like, it's so thick down there with just those elm trees and stuff. And I was just thinking it's the only place where I have like a decent line of sight. So I just very slowly kind of put my nose into the wind and just started walking like as slow as I could north. And then sure enough, I saw in that creek. I'm like, what is that? There's a little dark spot. Or as Caden would say, that little black deer.
Yeah.
So I was walking up and I saw one of those little black deers. And I'm like, oh shoot, that's a hog. And I didn't really know how far it was. I just kind of eyeballed it and I'm like, it's pretty good ways out there, but I'm pretty sure it's less than 200. And I ended up ranging it later, and I don't even remember what I told you, but it was
175 or
something like that. I don't know. 170, 180, somewhere. Yeah. More than 160, less than 200.
It was closer to 200 than 100 for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had not ranged that, like, I didn't know my drop or anything, but I'm like, I think I'm about 2,900 feet per second. So basically the difference between 100 and 200 is 2 inches tops. So I'm not going to hold or dial anything. I'm just going to, but I'm not going to try a headshot either. Because normally I try to headshot pigs. So I'm like, nope. And I saw that it was quartering to some. And at that point, I saw that it was a pig like playing in the mud. Like it was just like moving its head around and mud was just like flinging everywhere. So I'm like, I think it's a hog digging a wallow right now.
Yeah.
But what was nice with that long shot, because I was like out in the open, so it was more just because I didn't have any cover at first. I just laid down on my belly, went prone, and then when I laid just to hide, just so I wouldn't be standing out there like a sore thumb, which in hindsight, hogs can't see that well, so I don't know if that was entirely necessary. But when I was down there, I flipped out my bipod and I'm like, hey, I'm actually really stable to shoot from prone down here. And because it's a riverbed, there's just like no brush, no grass, no nothing. There's no chance I was going to hit, a piece of grass and do something bad. So I just lined up and then shot right in front of the shoulder, and it went down right there. And then walked up, and then as I walked up, I started sinking into the mud. And I'm like, oh, it's pretty muddy back here. And then I kind of went around this side, and I'm like, oh, it's really muddy back here. And then when I walked up, I was like, this is the biggest pig I've ever killed.
Big.
What's that?
It said big.
Yeah.
Big pig.
Yeah. So, and then I was like, well, let me just drag him out of this mud. And so I grabbed him, like, I can't move him. So I put on my gloves, tried to drag him. I couldn't move him. And I'm like, we're going to either need to get 2 guys on here, and at that point, I think I had sent you a picture of it, but the picture never came through. So you're like, did you shoot something? What are you talking about? And Paige was like, I heard a shot, but from the wrong direction. And like, I think I caused a lot of confusion by doing that.
Yeah.
So you went and picked up her and then came back. And I think in the meantime, I walked back to my truck and I moved my truck up closer because I was, I don't know.
You drove out into the creek pretty much, the dry part of it.
Yeah. So I got some paracord and I wrapped the paracord, but it was like digging into my hands. I tied a slip knot and then put it around the hog's leg and then was pulling on it, but it was digging into, like, crushing my hand so much that I couldn't pull any harder. So I wrapped it around a stick. I don't think I told you this.
Oh, yeah.
I wrapped it around a limb to be like a T-bar and was pulling on it, and it broke in half and I fell back on my butt. And I'm like, I need a bigger stick. So I went and found a bigger stick.
Sounds like a cartoon.
Yeah, it probably would have been pretty entertaining to watch it. So I went and got bigger log, wrapped it up, pulled it out as much as I could, and then went tied another string to another leg, pulled that one out as much as I could, and then I was just alternating until I got it
Dang.
at least out of the water. Like, I mean, when you showed
Yeah.
up, it was what, 10 feet from where I killed it, maybe 8 feet.
Yeah.
But it
Yeah.
was, I was just
Yeah,
like,
just
let me just get it
dry
out of
spot.
the water, because it was in about 6 inches of water at first.
Well, is where like you didn't sink in the mud anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Because you just go in there with your mud boots and just sink to your knees.
Yeah.
So got it out, brought some game bags, brought a light. And then, man, I appreciated your help with that thing so much, because that's where, if it was just me cleaning that thing,
Yeah.
I don't like wasting meat ever, but I would have been tempted to just leave it. Just because I don't
Yeah.
know how I would have done that on my own. Like, I think that would have been so tough. Like, the skin on that boar was
Oh
so
my
thick
gosh.
that I would literally take my knife and stab into it and just
Yeah. Yeah.
like saw back. Like the not the fat
was-
under the skin, but the actual skin was an inch thick.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there
And
was
it
an inch
was
of
like-
fat under that.
Yeah. It was hard. Like,
It was like
Hard.
plywood.
yes. Because like so Plenty cut down the backbone, like cut the skin, and then cut a slit down the front shoulder, and and so then with a deer will do this, and you just kind of roll the skin back
Yeah.
and just pull it down, and you pull the front shoulder out. This I start pulling the skin back, and it like moved like a plate.
Yeah.
It was like totally stiff, like it just like the whole thing came out, and I was like,
It
what
didn't
the-
roll
You
or
can't
anything.
roll it
Yeah.
back. Yeah,
Yeah.
you couldn't roll that one part back because it's just so thick and tough. And they talk about that like plate in their shoulder or whatever.
The
I'm like,
shield is
yep,
what everybody always says.
the shield. Yeah, that's it. It's a shield. Yeah, it is kind of like a shield. I mean, not to a 270, but
Yeah.
if I tried to like stab it with a spear or something, I'd have a hard time getting through it.
Yeah. Well, and what was interesting is with that bullet, I did not get an exit wound. Like, it was just a
Yeah.
thick enough animal. Because my goal, I think, for the ideal hunting round, I would like to just barely get an exit wound every time. Because if it zips right through, then like you're kind of wasting energy
Yeah.
because it's using its energy to keep going instead of expanding. But if it dumps all its energy,
gotcha.
it'll probably kill it, but it's not going to leave a big hole. So I want it to dump all its energy, but then just barely open up the other side. But it wasn't an issue. What? What are you laughing at?
So my question is, do you want that to be the perfect shot for the ideal shot, or do you want that to be for it hit both ribs or hit off the leg bone or whatever type of shot? Because like when you say that and you're like it just barely popped out the other side and I got blood and all this stuff, it's like if that's on the perfect shot, then when you shoot and you hit that front leg,
Yeah.
then that shot's not gonna go very far. Like you're not gonna do a whole lot. But I mean, you're gonna shatter the front leg, so you're not gonna go very far anyways. But you know what I'm saying? Like when it's not perfect,
Yeah.
then what happens with that like one that just has enough energy to barely get through?
I guess.
I mean, it's still gonna kill the deer if you hit it in the lungs or whatever. But
yeah.
I don't
No,
know.
and I'm not going to ever like power down my load. I think it's more just a matter of like bullet design. Because some people are
Okay,
like,
gotcha.
oh, I want these like varmint bullets that just basically hit something and just go poof, like the bullet breaks up. It doesn't ever
gotcha.
you can shoot a coyote and it won't even penetrate through. Versus
Gotcha.
like an FMJ that's just going to zip through and not dump any energy. So I'm like, I kind of want a happy medium there.
Gotcha. You want a little mushroom, but you don't want it to go. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but when
Completely
you're talking about an
phased
animal
out.
that dense with skin that thick, like it changes everything.
yeah.
So,
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
but
Completely
ultimately,
different.
like when we cut that thing up, I don't even know exactly where I hit. I know I held like in front of the shoulder and it dropped instantly and kicked a couple times. So I'm thinking I probably got neck bone or maybe
Yeah.
jugular or something. I don't know. But I hit like
Yeah.
front of
I didn't
shoulder.
even look for it.
Yeah. Like it was
I
like
was
with
just like, let's get the meat off of here. Get
with
outta
all
here.
that meat and hair and mess, and it's like even a 270 hole like becomes kind of hard to find at that point.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Oh yeah. And he like had really long hair, which I mean, if you've ever shot a hog, yeah. And it was just like it was all just matted in that nasty mud.
thick river
was
mud. Yeah.
so gross.
It was gross.
It's like, here's my meat.
And that's where having two people was really helpful, because we had to like, our hands were so like, we were having to like pass things around to wipe off our hands and stuff. So being able to like pull it off and then drop it straight in a game bag, never like set anything, that helped a lot.
Yeah.
But then
sure.
like, so that pig, I don't know, what would you guess on weight? I think now I have a number in my head, but
I'm gonna go with 220.
yeah, I was gonna say
I mean,
230.
I think you said that number at one point, and I was like, it is every bit of 220. Like, he was long. Like, I don't know if you know anything about the wild hogs, but like, their front shoulders and their hide get a lot thicker. Their back shoulders. I'm just kidding. That's their hindquarters don't get huge. Like their hams, they're not going to be like these enormous hams because they're like a big boar or anything.
Yeah,
they get long.
They just get to a point where they don't get any taller. They just get longer and like girthier.
Longer. Yeah. So they'll like bulk up in the front and their shoulders. Their shoulders will bulk up and they just get really long. And this guy was long.
Yeah.
Like he had that length from, back hips to his front shoulders. Like it was, I mean, I haven't seen a hog I haven't seen a lot of hogs, honestly, living in Texas for 10 years. There's a lot of guys who've seen way more than me, but this is a big boy.
Yeah. This
is by far the biggest one I've ever seen dead or cleaned or anything.
The long hog award goes to that one.
Yes. So I'd say, I mean, if somebody told me it was less than 200, I would have told them they're a liar. So I'll just say that.
Because I've shot a 200-pounder that I weighted on a scale, and this was significantly bigger than that.
Yes. Yeah. He is huge. I mean, if we put it on a scale and it like racked in at like 250, I'd be like, yep.
Yeah, I'd be surprised.
I mean, I would be a little bit surprised, but I would be more surprised if it was less than 200.
Yeah.
Now
hose him down and wash that 5 pounds of river mud off.
Yeah. He might be 220.
Yeah. But
cleaned.
So I really appreciate your help, and that was a big enough pig that like even like cutting the shanks, which normally, I don't know, we've used loppers a lot of times. I think it's a good easy way to do it. Or sometimes like when we were out in Laguna, cut around the joint just with a knife, just so you don't have to bring extra tools. But this pig was big enough that I went and got a small forest axe, and I literally just whack with an axe.
Yep.
Probably still need to
Hey, it worked great.
Yeah, it did. I think I need to go sharpen
Yep.
that axe because I was like basically like smacking down into fur and mud. Yeah.
Crap. Yeah, for sure.
But,
and I will say this doe, it's the third deer that I've quartered in the field this year. Not really. I mean, on my tailgate, I guess, in the field.
But you didn't hang it. Yeah, I know what you're. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it was very efficient, and like I just like I felt like super confident, and it always like takes me to the second or third deer in a year, which is like crazy that like I can say that now like multiple years in a row.
Yeah.
Like cleaning that many deer. It's like, but like going down the back straps and just like popping that back hip joint off and things like that, that's like becoming much more natural. That like it's one of those things that like by January you get pretty efficient at it, like helping other people out or cleaning your own deer or whatever, like get pretty good at it. And then like 8 months later you're like
Like I'm losing my skill.
Yeah, you're like what was it that I kept messing up last year when I started?
Well, I get what you're saying too. It goes from feeling like you're just kind of digging around to like, no, I know exactly where to cut.
Oh yeah. It's like, I mean, it's just like anything, but like going around the back hips. Like I feel like that's an art form for sure. Like the rest of it, like man, if you can't take a shoulder off a deer, like, I'm sorry, like, come out and have somebody help you out, and
Yeah.
we'll show you how easy it is. But taking the back ham off, like, there's some spots there where you can lose a lot of meat, and I have, and I want to, like, I can get past that. Like, I feel like with this doe, like, I was like, go around that, like, little angle part on the hips, you
Yeah.
know, and
Well, it's
then
just not intuitive because like
inside.
if you
Yeah.
saw the bone structure, you're like those shapes make sense, but when you see the meat on it,
Yeah.
you're like, huh?
That's weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
Start cutting around it, it doesn't make sense. And then underneath by the hip socket, underneath the ham, uh, I hit guts on that in one of my bucks. And just like that spot there, you know, I was like, ah. And so
Easy
just
to
like
do.
having that in your head of just, yep, just having that in your head of just like, where's that weak spot? Because that's what it is for me. It's just like there's those thin spots that are just real
Yeah.
weak where the meat's right next to not bone that you can
Well,
make mistakes.
I got to
Yeah.
tell a story on one of the guys, Trey, at my hunting camp. I don't know if he listens to this or not. Super cool dude, but he had killed that big pig. And he was like, okay, now I'm going to gut it. I'm like, dude, don't gut it. I haven't gutted a pig in a long time. Just do it gutless. And he was like, oh, okay. But I should have like stayed by him. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like, he's like, so how do you do that? I'm like, okay, slice here, 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 just completely skin the whole thing. And then I came back and I saw he was messing with the back hams, like about to do that cut and stuff. And I'm like, what do you got going on here? And he had like skinned it out, like he had skinned its nuts and like unpackaged it. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, do you think you're making progress here? And I realized I'm like, I probably should have given him some more specific directions. So take all the skin off. And I'm like, no. Forget that.
No, just
Put those away.
just enough to get the meat out. Yeah.
Because they were just like hanging there, like skinned out nuts, just like in the. I'm like, never seen anybody do
Hey.
it that way.
Rocky Mountain oysters, anybody?
Yeah. South Texas oysters. But all to the point of,
Yeah.
that joint, if you're not familiar with it, it can be kind of weird to slice and dice.
Yeah. There's a little art form to that.
Yeah. But got that pig loaded up, and thankfully you had brought another cooler, which ended up working out perfectly. So we're just like, oh, and then you're like, I got another cooler. We're like, perfect. Put it in that. Then I'll run in town and get ice. So it all worked out.
Yep. So we just threw it in the back of your truck. Good to go. Because you had a doe in one cooler,
Yep.
so that, and then we had this dirty hog in the other cooler. We didn't want to throw the dirty hog in the doe cooler.
No. And actually, like, I was a little bit nervous about how
I
dirty
wasn't
it was
for that.
because that like silt from the river, but we had left all the sinew on it. So actually,
Yeah.
when I got it off, I rinsed it off and then I peeled back all that because that stuff gets so
there's-
sticky that like if you get dust and dirt in there, there's just no getting it off. But when I peeled off that sinew, pretty much everything stayed with it, and it was just like normal, nice, clean meat under that. Nothing weird at all.
Yep. Yeah, I believe it. Yep.
So and I
Yeah.
took those pork loins off and I sliced them horizontally and made little pork chops out of them. And actually, for
Yeah.
a pig that size, I was surprised at how good they tasted. They were fantastic.
Really?
They were a little bit
Really?
tough, like they were,
Yeah,
but the
for
flavor
sure.
was very good.
Yeah, because you have to cook them all the way through.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
A nasty old pig like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't
So you
want.
can't leave it medium rare.
Nope.
If you could, I bet they would have been
Probably.
great.
Yeah.
You know,
Probably
if the
would.
flavor was fine.
But yeah, I
So,
cooked it all the way
but-
through just because of big old boar hog. I don't want trichinosis.
Oh,
or
for sure.
something.
Yeah. Any pork.
And I basically
that,
just
but-
like, sliced it and I just put salt, pepper, and a little bit of chicken seasoning just because I was like, let me try it. And I
Yeah.
think the chicken seasoning's
Yeah.
just like sage, paprika, onion
Yeah.
powder, just kind of generic stuff. Just threw it on the
Yeah.
grill. It's really good.
I think pork's a very versatile
Yeah.
meat.
Yeah.
Like chicken, where it's like you could probably put about any. I mean, you can go sweet, you can go savory, you can, and it's pretty good with all those as long as it's balanced, whatever you're making.
Yep.
So
So did that and then dropped off the rest of the processor. So you've got like 20 pounds of bratwurst and 14 pounds of breakfast sausage headed your way. So
yeah,
you'll be chowing down
sweet.
on
Love
wild
it.
hog sausages for a while.
I can't wait. It'll last us like a month.
Holy smokes.
No, no, we'll get 3 months out of it.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
that plus
yes,
three deer in the freezer, you're pretty well set.
Yep.
But you want to get at least one
Yeah.
more, you said.
yeah, we're trying to get one more. It'd be because we had 5 in the freezer last year and went through all those, except the treasures that you find every once in a while you're digging around in there.
Yeah.
But like there was, I mean, my freezer, I have indoor freezer. I have a fridge in the garage with a freezer, and then I have like a little box freezer. So it's probably I think 4 feet wide by 2.5 feet. One of those.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's a
and
little
they're
bigger than the
all
one I've got.
yeah. So it might be the same way. It might be 3 feet, 3.5. I don't know. It's not very big, but I mean it's deep. So like you can stack in a bunch of stuff. It's very efficient. The only bad thing about it is you lose stuff down the bottom of those
'Cause
freezers.
you got to dig. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I've just put 3 deer on top of all that crap. So like all the little odds and ends that were left over from those 5 deer last year down at the bottom. So I'm like trying to like turn them over and like pull the old stuff to the top and like do that whole thing. And it's just
I distinctly
Yeah.
remember as a child having like a plastic tote with all my Legos in it. And all the little pieces would filter down to the bottom, and all the big
yeah.
pieces would stay at the top. And I
Yep.
would just, if I ever wanted to find like one of the little Lego guy heads or whatever, I had to dig all the way to the bottom.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that.
Yep, it is. Which I have one basket in there that like sits kind of on the top of the freezer, like a little basket thing.
Yeah.
And I used to just keep like the back strap in there, but I've learned that that's a bad idea. I need to keep the oldest meat in there.
Yeah.
Like dig out the oldest meat, put it in there, and then just like leave everything. Because like if I find backstrap at the end of the year, it's gonna be like Christmas Day.
Yeah.
That never makes it that far.
Yeah.
So I should just let that trickle down to the bottom, like
For
Lego
me,
heads.
that little tray is my separator. So if I'm ever like tanning out a hide, or like there's bone broth, or if there's ever something like weird or different, that's where that goes. Like it doesn't get mixed up with regular inventory.
Yep, that makes sense.
Well, and then you did the
I would just
full
use a different freezer.
10-day cooler age on yours, and then you started, or I guess
Yeah,
9. Today was 9.
9 days.
Yeah.
Yeah. Didn't make it 10, but it was
you'll
pretty close. And I was like,
Finish
meh.
at 10 or 11.
I went out. Yeah, I went out and checked it yesterday, and I could kind of tell by like I'll pull. I always have my back straps on the top of the cooler. So just another like little tip if you ever put your deer on ice to age them, wet age, whatever you want to call it. I don't know, not the true wet age, but the Texas cooler wet age.
Yep.
I put my back straps on the top because your quarters are protected much more. So if it does get wet in the bottom of your cooler, your quarters will be fine. Like they're not gonna, swell up or get washed out. Because like you want a lot of the blood to drain out of your back straps, but you don't want them to be like gray and washed out.
Like zombie flesh. Yeah.
Exactly. If
Well,
you
and
leave
it's
them
just
on top.
'cause, you got silver skin on one side of it, but the whole other side is open. So yeah,
Yep.
that's a good
So
tip.
I usually put the silver skin up and have the back straps on top, so that like as the the ice is kind of melting down over it, it's kind of running off of it. So it's not like melting into those back straps. So it's like the back straps are more just like kind of sitting there aging.
Yeah.
Where
Not
my
soaking up.
quarters, the quarters are like, just whatever, freaking blood can get out of there, go for it. Like
Yeah.
I'm not worried about it. There's enough protection on the outside of those. Is like as soon as you peel that layer off the outside of a quarter, like You're like, oh, it's like I shot it yesterday. But the meat is much more tender because it's been sitting and, all that lactic acid has, run out of it or whatever it does mellows out somehow.
Yeah.
So I pulled those back straps out today. Like I squished them yesterday and I was like poke, poke, poke last night. And I was like, oh yeah. So I got them out today and I'll fillet that silver skin off. And oh man, like this is like, I'll tell you, this is best backstrap butchering job I think I've ever done.
Nice.
I filleted that silver skin off. And so it's just like perfectly like flat, like no cut lines at all the way down both back straps. And then the other side, the side that doesn't have silver skin, it's usually like pretty rigid.
Yeah.
Like I just like very thinly like slid the super sharp knife down there, and it got that like just like super flat too, because
Like
that
you
side
would
is
use
like
a planer on a deck.
yes, that's what my back straps look like today. And I was like,
Nice.
I should have taken a picture because I was so proud of it.
I kind of take the lazy way out sometimes. It's like I start in the middle and I slice
Yeah.
it one way and then I grab it and go.
Yep.
Whoosh. And
Oh yeah,
about half the time it works perfectly.
Yep.
Nice, smooth.
Yep.
But if it's really tender, sometimes you'll go whoosh and pull off a big
Yeah.
old chunk of meat.
rips a big old chunk.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that,
It does the tenderloin rip.
yeah, pretty much. So
Like, ew. Yep.
sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But
Yeah. So the meat was like, I could feel that it was super tender. I like that doesn't always like guarantee, but like you can kind of tell. Felt super tender. It's like the cuts were like great. Like just can't wait. And this doe was like, I think she was in heat or something because she's kind of stinky when I was cleaning her.
Yeah.
But the meat is like fresh as spring field when I opened up the cooler today. So
that's what I say. Once you get it's all the hair. It's just like that piece.
Oh,
Smell. Like once you get the hide off, they're all fine. Like you can't
That's
tell the
it.
difference from
That's
one
it.
to another. Even like the nastiest ruddy buck, like you smell the hide and you're like, ugh, it's kind of musky
Yeah.
and funky. But then once you skin them out and the meat mellows in the cooler for a couple days, you're like, it's just meat.
yeah, you can't tell.
Yeah.
But that's the whole thing. It's like, well, if I took those nasty scent glands that they pee on and I rubbed them all over my meat would probably taste bad.
Yeah. So that's when
So it's
people,
like
are
people
like,
are like rugby bucks are so nasty, blah 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 blah. It's like, well, there's probably about 10 different reasons that your
yeah.
meat didn't taste very good.
And that's why when
And
people
I
are like,
can
yeah, I age it
eliminate-
without skinning it. I age it hair on. It just, to me, the very first thing that you do is get that hair away from the meat because
Yeah.
that's where the
Yeah.
most dirt and
You gotta-
stinky stuff is.
Yeah, yeah, stinky buck. It's everything outside the skin that's stinky,
Yeah.
and you're just leaving it on your meat
Yeah.
to let it. I don't know. You're marinating your meat in ruddy buck. I wonder why it tastes bad.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I do think there's probably a way to do it right and do it wrong. And there's a lot of people up north who it literally airs out, hangs outside. But I think like if you ever put anything with hair on it in your cooler,
Oh yeah,
it's
no.
not going to be good.
Well, almost as good as the dude that had. Remember on our drive to Michigan, the guy that had the deer
Yeah.
on the back of the truck, and he had his like dual exhaust blowing into the cavity of the deer.
Yeah, so imagine if you will, for anybody who didn't see this listening. So he had one of those trailer hitch little extended basket carrier things coming out the back. But then
Usually
he had,
you like strap a cooler or totes to it.
yeah, but then he had, I think it was another Ram 1500, just like what we have, but it had dual
there
exhaust
two?
coming out the back.
Yeah.
Blowing right on that basket, and he had a buck like bungee corded onto that basket with dual exhaust, just like just
Yeah.
blasting this deer with.
Right
Yeah.
into this deer. It's just like that's gonna be so bad.
Like the only way it
And
could
then
have been
people are like-
worse is if it was like a diesel, and he's like rolling coal.
yeah. And then those people are like, yeah, I don't like venison after he, cooks them up some like overcooked whatever dry crappy meal. It's like it's just got some weird gamey taste to it. It's
Yeah.
like gamey as in like a Hemi.
Is it like octane? Unburned gasoline?
Yeah.
Well,
So,
I think it's good that we're getting at this point in the season. I get a little bit antsy because so much of the year is looking forward, like early season, like you see the patterns, you see the deer movement, you're getting excited about it. Usually I'm killing a deer or two in early season, then everything is all hoping for the rut. And then we
yeah.
get past the rut and I'm just like,
Uh,
still got more deer to kill, but
yep.
it's the part of the season that I'm least confident in.
Yeah.
Because it's not like I know how to pattern deer in early season. I know how to hunt likely spots during the rut. I don't think you really pattern them during the rut. You just hunt places where they're likely to happen into you.
Yep.
But late season, if you have food plots and stuff, I think this is the best time to just hunt green fields. But if you're not hunting food plots, it's tricky. And then ultimately it all kind of defaults into either, I guess, kind of spot and stock, like try to bump into something or see it and get in on it, or just hunt feeders.
Yep.
So
The old Texas way.
yeah, just because there's not a, like, I don't know. I feel like even if you have a great trail, by the time the woods are bare and stuff, it doesn't necessarily, they can walk anywhere. It doesn't really mean that much.
Yeah.
So I don't know. All that to say,
Yep.
I've got 2 more tags in my pocket. You've got tags as well, and so it's just, I don't know, where we're anxious to kill stuff, but it gets a little bit tricky.
Yeah. My wife has a lot of tags burning holes in her pockets.
Yeah.
I want to get her back out there. See
Yep.
if I can get her on a deer. We'll see.
So that is the plan, to get back out there this weekend. I think we're all doing it. I think Daniel's probably going to join us, it sounds like, in some way or fashion. I don't know. We're still figuring out what all that looks like. You said you're probably going out Friday. I don't even know what I'm doing, but we'll get it figured out. But ultimately, we just kind of had to tell the story of, you got a doe, I got a doe, our rifles went to barking, I got a pig, and we got coolers full of meat, but we ain't done yet.
That's right. Just getting started.
Yep.
No, we're halfway through.
Yeah, well, but we still got more tags. So
Deer season anyways, yes.
yep. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, just kind of hunt and chat. Just 2 guys kind of shooting the breeze, telling the stories of shooting deer and all the fun that goes along with it. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening along. Until next time, stay safe, be free, and never stop seeking adventure.